Hi guys, how are you doing? Welcome to Modern English Grammar. I want to talk with you a little bit today about the ideas that we're going to be talking about this semester and also just some practical tips and advice for the course so that you will be 100% successful. What we're going to see, which is most important, is that you need to do linguistics in order to understand it. So it's something that you have to participate in. Think of it as an academic sport. If you are on the sidelines watching, you might understand a lot about the game that you're watching and you might know about the rules and everything else, but unless you get out there and you start participating, you're not going to really know that sport, right? So it's the same with linguistics. Linguistics is an academic sport. And this course is an introductory course. It does not assume that you have any background in linguistics. And in fact, actually it assumes that you have no background in linguistics. So if you have had previous linguistics courses, then you can get in touch with me, and there may be other linguistics courses that we offer at FIU that would be more interesting for you. Since this will really be an introduction to the field, maybe there would be another course that you would like to take which is looking at, for example, language acquisition, or looking at sociolinguistics, or looking at the many different components of language that we study within linguistics. Okay, so in terms of the content of this course, what is linguistics? What are we talking about when we say linguistics? We know that we're talking about language, but we're talking about language in a way that is a little bit different from the way that you are used to from some other courses. You may be used to analyzing language in literature, or you may be used to talking about language and how it's used in poetry and other creative writing. And that's fantastic. From the point of view of linguistics, language is a set of data. It's a bunch of sentences that we have to understand. So in other words, linguists look at language from a scientific perspective. So the question that linguists will always ask over and over, and this is the question that we'll be asking again and again in this course, is what is the structure of this sentence? And how do we know that that is the correct structure for that sentence? So what we're going to see is that for everything that we will want to say about a given sentence, there are tests that you can do to show that the structure that you're claiming is the correct structure is actually the one. So in essence, what you're going to be doing in this class in Modern English Grammar is looking at that question of how are sentences structured? What do sentences have? Do they have subjects and predicates? Do they have direct objects and indirect objects? Are they made up of verbs and nouns? And what are all these things that I'm talking about? By the end of the semester, you will know and feel confident answering those questions. Also, please feel comfortable to get in touch with me. If you have doubts about material that we're talking about, if you have anything at all with respect to the course that you want to ask me, please get in touch with me using the Canvas email. The Canvas email is going to be the best way to contact me. So what I would like to do is to talk a little bit about what linguistics is, a little bit about what linguistics isn't, and that way we can start looking at the structure of sentences in English. So, oftentimes if you ask someone what is English grammar, they might say, well, it's a set of rules. It's a set of rules for the English language. And that's exactly what we're going to see is the case. The interesting point about that statement, it's a set of rules, is what type of rules? What kind of rules are we talking about in modern English grammar? And we're going to notice that there's a duck outside my house, so he's going to just be squawking or whatever ducks do. That's fine. Yeah, so there's a traditional way of looking at this question of what are the rules of English grammar, which tells us the ways in which we should speak. This is what we call prescriptive rules of English grammar. They tell you how you should be saying a sentence of English. And these rules exist for all languages, not just for English, but English has an interestingly detailed historical record of prescriptive rules and prescriptivism in general. So I want to talk with you a little bit about this perspective on language, because a lot of people, for example, when I tell people that I'm a linguist, oftentimes people will say, oh, no, don't listen to what I'm saying, then no, forget it. And people sort of clam up and they'll say, oh, my English grammar is terrible, oh, please don't correct me, and immediately I'm like, yeah, I'm here to correct you. I'm interested in what you have to say and how you have to say it, because linguistics is all about finding out about how different people speak differently. All of that is fascinating. Linguists love that. There is no way of speaking any language in linguistics which is incorrect, which is not proper, which is not fit, which is so. However you speak, the languages that you speak, however you do that, you are necessarily doing that by applying an unconscious list of rules to each and every sentence that you understand and that you produce. And that's why if someone is learning English as a second language, and let's say they ask you, I don't understand this thing about asking a question. Why do the words get moved around in the sentence? So if you have a sentence like, Mary was fixing the car, and you want to make that into a question, you could say, was Mary fixing the car? And if you happen to write it, then you'd have a little question mark at the end, but the punctuation isn't really important. Everything we're going to be talking about this semester has to do with the spoken language. The spoken language is the real language. What do we mean by the spoken language is the real language? What we mean is that every single language that has ever existed on Earth, and presumably every language that ever will exist on Earth, is a spoken language. However, only about 10% of the languages that are currently spoken in the world are written languages. So we see that, as linguists, we say that the spoken form of language is primary. The written form of language is very interesting, and they're very, intricate studies of different types of writing systems that linguists will look at, but what is essential to every single language necessarily is that it is spoken. And by spoken, we mean spoken in a broad sense. So that will include, for example, ASL, American Sign Language, which you might think is expressed using the hands, different gestures, and facial expressions. That's true. American Sign Language, like all sign languages, also has very intricate rules of grammar. So when you think about sign languages, sometimes you might think, well, they're really, really different from spoken languages. Maybe I could just observe what people are doing when they're signing and I could figure it out. And if you take it upon yourself to examine someone who's using a sign language and you try to decipher what it is that they're saying, you're going to see very quickly that the way in which the language is used is a lot more than just, for example, I, right? You would think, well, if I'm going to use a pointing function, I would point to myself for the word I. And you might think that it would be logical like that. You could just continue to understand the language. Maybe the word for mixing is something like this. Okay, and that can get you to a certain point, but the really interesting thing about all sign languages is that if you try to only use that way of understanding the language, you will understand very little of it. So it would be the same, if you didn't know German and you were thinking to yourself, okay, I'm just going to watch this person speak German. Imagine you were learning German in this way. So you're just faced with someone speaking German and they're moving their arms around and they're gesturing as they're talking. And sometimes the gestures will indicate something about what it is that they're saying. So that might help you to understand some of the words. But certainly, we wouldn't want to say that the best way to learn German would be to just sit in a room and watch videos of people speaking German. Why is that not enough to learn German or any language? Because crucial to language acquisition, language learning, is interaction. You have to participate. So it's like linguistics. It's a participatory sport. You can study French for years and years and years. As many of us know, we think that we've got this second language or third language down, and then you go to France and you don't understand anything that anyone is saying, and you feel so bad because you were so ready, you had studied so long, so many years of those French classes, and all of a sudden people are speaking so fast, and most frustratingly, those little kids who can't even tie their shoes are just babbling on in French and everyone understands them, and it's impossible to speak it because it's just going by too fast, right? So this is what happens with real human languages. Many people come to the US every year after studying English for many, many years, and when they first hear people speaking English, their reaction is, but what's going on? This isn't English, this isn't what I learned at home, this is so different. Because everyone speaks English in a different way. We all speak in different dialects. So dialect isn't a negative idea. A dialect just describes the way that a particular person speaks. And for example, if you go to the American South, not south, like not including Miami, right? I mean, like the American South, like Mississippi and those places. People are going to speak in one way, which is really different from where I come from. I grew up in Boston, up north, and there are instances in which I can't understand someone who's a speaker of Southern English, and I know they don't understand me too. So the manner in which you speak is a necessary component of speaking. There is no speaking without a way of speaking, without a dialect. So everyone speaks a dialect. And no one dialect is better or worse than any other way of speaking. We have distinctions based on geography, we have distinctions based on ethnicity, we have distinctions based on historical periods, we have distinctions based on everything that is relevant to us, right? My kids are Well, one of my kids is still a teenager. I think of them as being young all the time. But if they're talking with each other, I will oftentimes not understand what they're talking about. And of course, they know I don't understand what they're talking about. That's why they're speaking that way, because they're trying to have a private conversation and mom's right there, and you can't really have a private conversation with mom sitting right there. So different groups of people in society develop distinct ways of speaking that will make you either part of that in group or outside of the group. And that is the natural way that language works. It works that way all over the world. It's fascinating. Okay, let's take a break and we will be right back with more discussion about linguistics.